really, really excited for this, our final panel of 7 and 7 Year 3. One thing that I know it's been coming up in conversation a lot is how we all can still have an impact on the world for the causes that we care about while being nomads. So to answer this question, we have assembled an excellent panel for you. Please welcome to the stage our first panelist, Sarah Benvenuti. She's a 7 and 7 alumni, founder of Benvenuti Arts, supporting fundraising and administration in small arts-based organizations.
Hello.
Up next, we have Martina Donkers. Martina is also a 7 and 7 alumni, and she's a grant and strategy consultant for social impact organizations. Up next, we have Ambar Januel. She's a 7 and 7 speaker you'll hear from later. She's also a community development consultant and Google Next Gen Tech Policy Leader. And finally, our wonderful moderator, please welcome a wonderful storyteller, motion designer, and animator who's currently using her skills on a year-long project called She's the Universe to interview teen girls on every continent. Please welcome Laura Peña.
Hello, everybody. Hello. How's everybody doing? Awesome. Well, I'm super, super excited to be having this conversation because I'm. Is that good? Okay. Because I've been in this nomad world for a while, and now in the past, in the past year, I've started working with social impact and including that into my world. So having these 3 women here that I can ask them all the questions that I have, that hopefully are questions that you also have, it's pretty exciting. So we're gonna talk all about social impact and how we go about it while we are traveling the world. So I wanna start with all of you maybe saying a little bit about how do you have social impact with the work that you are doing? So I want to start maybe with Sarah over there.
So I work mainly with artists, independent artists, and small arts organizations in the U.S. The U.S. model for the arts is no government funding whatsoever. It's very little. The amount that the federal government gives to the arts is less than the amount that New York City's government gives to the arts. So I work with these small nonprofits around fundraising administration, so helping them do that part of the job better and more efficiently so they can focus more time on their art. And I've worked in the field for over a decade, and I was working at mid-size theaters and dance companies and just was finding that, the bigger they got, the more bureaucracy and the less sort of real impact they were having. And so many of the small arts organizations are really working in the community and having a really direct impact on the community they work with. And so, my consultancy focuses really on those groups and helping them do more of what they do and spend less time worrying about the money and the business part of it.
How about you, Martina?
Similar sort of thing. So I also work with a lot of grants, so searching for funding in order to drive social impact work. I actually came at this world from government. I somehow wound up working in government after I finished my university education, and got really passionate there about becoming a facilitator for social impact work and creating an environment that would allow people to be able to get their projects done. There's a lot of people in this world who have amazing ideas about how to improve things for their communities and for people in the world at large. But the administrative and bureaucratic skills are not always there. And so I really see my role as a facilitator. I'm kind of like a bureaucracy interpreter sometimes. I work as an independent freelance consultant working with a whole lot of different organisations. So the social impacts that I get to have are very diverse. I work with upper income families in Sydney who are struggling with perinatal mental health issues. They've career women who suddenly there's a baby and it doesn't quite do things the way that their lives have all gone to order before, and they're quite suffering with mental health issues. So what are we going to do there? On the opposite side of it, I work with an organisation that is delivering anti-malarial supplies into sub-Saharan Africa and using quite innovative mobile phone technology, not smartphones, actually just regular old feature phones and SMS messages, in order to make more efficient deliveries of anti-malarial medication So the work that I get to do is quite diverse, and the populations that I get to work with are quite diverse. But yeah, it's really all about facilitating that access to funding and going through those administrative hurdles that exist in the world when we're dealing with social impact projects.
Yeah. How about you, Amber? Tell me.
Sure. So I've had a huge shift in my career over the past few years. I was running a creative agency in LA, and the work that we were doing was really exciting. To a certain extent, it was very glamorous. It was in LA, it was fashion, entertainment, but I just didn't feel very fulfilled. And I got invited by Google to join an external program that they have, and pretty much we are called tech policy leaders, like of the next generation. And we work in everything from social justice to racial justice. We talk about the future of the internet, the future of work, where AI and machine learning is taking us, and how it affects communities of color and women, especially when they're looking for jobs, but also when it's affecting policies in the US. Doing this work made me realize that I did not want to work in fashion and entertainment anymore at all. So I left the agency about 1.5 years ago when I left LA to become a digital nomad. And I started working primarily with nonprofits and organizations and tech companies that are focused on social impact. So now I work with them on strategies for community development, for marketing, and for growing awareness and creating partnerships with other companies that are also interested in being in social impact and working in diversity and inclusion, but don't quite know how.
So something that with that I'm always was very curious when I was little. I will see commercials about like UNICEF and like feed the children, and I never really I wanted to feed everybody, but really that was not like my calling. That's not something that I was really like passionate about. So, but for the longest time, I thought that I had to if I wanted to do any work that was had any social impact, I had to change my entire career and reinvent myself. What do you think about that? Like how, maybe we were talking, Amber, about how we can maybe use the skills that we already have. So yeah.
I mean, so my biggest thing, because I get asked a lot about how people can get more involved in the work that I do, and I think the work that we do in general, and my biggest remark for everybody, and I actually think 7 and 7 is a really great example when we were talking about the volunteer opportunity that we have, the fact that they are creating a website and we're talking about how all of us can create awareness. That's really a great example of what it should look like. Me leaving the agency, I switched a little bit of the work I did, but for the most part, I do very similar work. I just had to evolve it to work for nonprofits that are in social impact. So instead of being like, okay, cool, I'm gonna stop working in marketing and communications at all, and I'm gonna go build houses, I was like, no, I'm going to figure out how to do what I do, but apply it to the companies that are actually making a difference in this world.
Mm-hmm. I think there's another really key point there is there are so many causes out there, and there are so many ways to make a difference. There's so much need in our world. Projects I work on include taking stand-up comedy performances to rural communities who might not ever get the chance to experience that type of art and storytelling. And then something as diverse as then food deliveries for people with intellectual disability, and working with nutritionists to help people with intellectual disability understand how to cook and how to... there's so much variety there of different causes and different ways to help people. It's not just feed the children, and I think sometimes social impact work can feel as simple as feed the children. You have organisations like World Vision and Save the Children who have these very large mass market commercials and things like that, and I think it contributes to this idea that that's sort of the be-all and end-all, and it's not. There's so many different ways that you can use your work to have a really positive impact on your world and on people and issues that are important to you.
Yeah. There's a lot of this idea that you have to volunteer and that's the only way to do it. It's, what do you,
sometimes, especially in the US right now, there's so much shit going on that I'm like, oh, I should be doing more. And then I remember I work with nonprofits every day. I am doing something, but working with the arts, it can kind of feel outside of that. But what's great about it is, yesterday we were talking about values a lot, right, on stage. And I think taking that into this kind of work is really important. If you have skills and values in a certain area, don't go if you're not into the arts, or if you don't have something that's applicable for that, don't put your skills there, because you're actually not helping. You're not helping them. I think we've discussed a little bit the volunteering thing I think we'll get into, but finding a good fit for your skills, finding a good fit for your values. I'm a musician by training, and I went to grad school for arts management. I didn't ever want to do anything else but work in the arts, and I'm really good at spreadsheets and finances and grant writing. And so that's such a useful skill in this industry. And it's important for me with Benvenuti Arts that all of my artists have values of diversity, inclusivity, that they are doing community-based work. And so that's just the little way that I can sort of make that impact.
I think that's a really good point too, the do what you're good at. So the way that I actually got into grant writing, I fell into a role in government in grants administration, and I was assessing grant applications and deciding who should get the money. And my mum runs a non-profit, disability non-profit, and she was doing grant applications. And I said to her, oh, well, you know, when you do your application, make sure you do this and this, you know all this. And she's like, wait, make sure I do what now? And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you structure it like this, and you make sure you talk about these issues. And it was obvious to me because I'd been in that world, and that was a skill set that I had. And for her, she'd come at it from quite a different perspective. It wasn't a skill set that she had. And it was really like a light bulb moment of, hold on a second, not everyone's good at this, but I am. So maybe I can help them with this particular part of what they do.
Yeah. Like, I don't know about you, everybody, but the idea of writing grants, it's very new to me. You know, I'm like, how do you even get money? Like the finance part of all this, for me, it's like, you know, the word nonprofit sounds very much like there's no profit. So is this true? Like,
Such a pet peeve of mine.
is this maybe there's no money on this? Like,
No.
you
No.
know.
No. It's a nonprofit.
You got to have profit.
Yeah, nonprofit just means that your profit can't go back to any shareholders or owners. So if you're working with a nonprofit, they should make money. They should make money and put it away so that they have 6 months savings, so that if something goes wrong, and pay their staff and values. So I think too, like when we talk about working with nonprofits, I know a lot of people want to volunteer their time and build houses. Like we said, it's the go-to. But you know, when you're bringing a skill set to a nonprofit, in your own business, if you want to try to work into this space, while there are some limitations on budget size, depending on the organization, they will pay, and most of them do have the value of wanting to pay people. I know I brought Kelly in on a client of mine wanted a website, and they had some board members who did commercial Broadway theater, and they were like, well, you need 30 grand for a rebranding. And I was like, guys, I know someone who can probably build you a great website and do it with a little less. And I know that they really wanted to pay her actual rate, you know? And most of my clients, even though they're very small, they do want to value. And so that goes along with the financial piece and you know, not losing money every year. You can't do that.
My mum's organisation doesn't work with volunteers because volunteers complicate the issue too much. It's much, much easier to hire a skilled person and pay them the award wage to do the work that they do. When you're working with volunteers, then you have what's the volunteer getting back from it, and the whole issue gets a bit more murky and more complicated. There's issues with commitment. A lot of non-profits prefer to just have paid staff, or freelancers or contractors or consultants or... Non-profits pay. They do. They really do.
Amber, what do you think are like other things that are like misconceptions about this kind of work?
I mean, we were just talking about this the other day, but one of the biggest thing that we hear working with nonprofits and then even like on a governmental level is how traditional they are, and especially for us that all work digitally, how slow they are to move things over to a digital level. And while that is true, if you're able to talk to them in a way that you understand what they actually need and what they want from the work that you can provide, then there's actually an opportunity to work there. And honestly, like they very desperately need everything that we do, right? Like this isn't something that they don't need. They know that they need it. They just do not understand how. And the more that we're just like, oh, you need to be on social media and this and that, they're like, that's not what they need to hear. Like they really need to hear, like, how is this going to save their team time?
Yeah.
How is it going to actually cut down on the budget that they're using? Because yes, that is a very real concern, but they have the budget for it. They just do not know how to allocate it. And then you kind of need to be a little bit aware of the nonprofit that you're working with too, because the way that the funds that they have works is a lot of times the funds are very restricted. So for example, like if they have a grant come in from a certain organization, sometimes they can only put that money towards whatever the mission is that they're working on. So a lot of nonprofits do have a tough time like raising funds for like money that they can use freely, right? But it is our job to say, like, we know that they have that money. How are we going to save them costs on everything else that they're doing? And even more than that, save them time. I was talking with someone that works on a governmental level, and things have really stalled since Trump on this, but they were trying to get immigration forms all to be digital, which in the US is a huge, huge issue. And he was saying that his biggest convincer for showing the government how much they need to move things onto a digital level, and same thing goes for when he works with nonprofits, is just showing them like how much of a line they have. So like how much backup there is just because it's not digital. Like if you can prove how much time it's going to save and how much funds it's going to save, like they will happily pay you what you want. Like it's not about they'll pay you less for what you do. It's like, no, you need to show how you're going to save them time, save them funds, and they can work with you.
That said, there are, of course, modern social impact organisations who are run by very tech-savvy people who are across all of this stuff and are really excited about it. My organisation who does the food deliveries to people with disability, when I first started working with them, I was approached by a third-party website that was matching freelancers, and I said, okay, yeah, I'm really keen to have a chat to them. Just keep in mind the time difference. I'm in Barcelona, and oh my goodness, oh, you're in a different country. Oh. When I actually spoke to the guy, he was like, you're in Barcelona, that's so cool. You got to go to this restaurant, you got to go to the, like all the different, and he's totally across it. These guys are actually, they're not a non-profit, they're a social impact company, so they're profit for purpose. So,
right, I was going to ask you about that,
Yeah.
like social for purpose, and about, like, that's a term that I've never heard, and I was like, doing my research on you, and I saw that word, and I was like, what is that? I'm going to ask that. And also, so a lot of us maybe are not working for a company. Maybe we don't want to work for a nonprofit organization, but we want to like include in our work like social, like impact. So how are ways that we can actually do that? What do you ladies think?
Yeah, so profit for purpose is really, it's private companies that are structured in the way that private companies are typically structured, whatever country that is in. But they're mission-driven companies. So rather than being driven by the mission of making profit and the mission of making money for their shareholders, they're driven by the mission to whatever mission that they state it is, and that makes it much more like a non-profit, which tend to be mission-driven, and then that's usually written into the constitution of the non-profit organisation is being driven toward this mission. Profit for purpose companies, they're not restricted in the fact that of not being allowed to. For the owners of the company to make a profit. And so that often helps to attract better talent, offer better wages to like top talents and top staff members. And it also helps to attract investors and social impact investors. That's a really growing field. People who, particularly high net worth individuals who want to invest, but they also do want to see a return on their investment. That return on investment might be small. They do want a return, but they want to, it's like when you invest, do you want to invest in a coal company or do you want to invest in a solar company? Like, it's that ethical perspective to what you do with your money and what you try to achieve with it and how you make your return. So profit for purpose is really interesting and it's really growing at the moment.
Yeah. And I think there's like, you're going to say something? No, I was going to say like there's like so many ways also to give back, right? Like the way that 77 is doing, which I find fascinating. I'm like, how can I, I'm already doing that, but my company as an animator, I'm like, how can I do work there that actually I'm giving back? Like, what are those ways as well?
I like to, especially in the arts world and small arts world, my clients are just as much entrepreneurs as everyone in this room. I have one client who's a disabled dancer who came from academia, and she's now a disability rights advocate, and she's leading the charge in the dance space in the US for inclusive dance experiences. And so like we're going after funding for her that is for entrepreneurial women in addition to traditional dance and arts funding. So she's just one example. I have one client who just can't stop starting nonprofits. She just starts a nonprofit every year. And she's actually guiding people through that process. And she's amazing. And so I think when you're doing your own work, I think a lot of us think about the pricing and the model and how you're going to market yourself and blah, blah, blah. And just know that like a lot of nonprofits, it's not that they can't or don't need your skill set, or it's not even that they couldn't pay you for it. It's that sometimes the way we present ourselves out there in the world sort of says, only people who are working at a certain level only. That's all I'm looking for. And so I think if you're interested in getting into more work with nonprofit or social good organizations, I think going to them a little bit and knowing that they've got the skill set, they've got the energy, they have the entrepreneurial skills a lot of times because they're doing everything with even less money than we do. But going to them and knowing that barrier to entry, and I know in the U.S. at least, that culture of like nonprofit or for-profit, are you nonprofit or for-profit? Like it's two completely different needs, but the needs are still there. Sometimes you just have to be the one to enter into the space and start the conversation.
Yeah. So as we are all, travelers, location independent people, the idea of working on something like this feels like I have to be in one specific place. What do you have to say about that? Do I have to be in now that I'm starting this nonprofit, I'm like, do I have to be there to do meetings with my board? And I'm just learning what a board is and finding people for this. So it's very new to me. So if, I would love when it's question time that you actually ask questions because I have many. And I'm I don't want to ask all my questions because I'm sure that you have some. So
it depends on what your area of focus is and honestly what you're really interested in. Just like Sarah said, it really has to be something that you're passionate about. For example, I work a lot in policies that are in the US, and I'm in the US for maybe a month or two every year. I'm not based out of the US, but these are things that really matter to me. We have a lot of race issues in the US right now, and if I can do my part, even if I'm not in the US, to make a difference, I will. We have elections coming up in the US. Again, I am not there, but that does not mean that I don't care about what's happening right now. And that's not to say that all of you need to focus on what's happening in the communities that you come from, right? Because we all have different stories as to what that looks like. But I understand the way that policies work to a certain extent in the US. I am not a lawyer. It's not my focus, but I work with policy lawyers. If I were to come to Columbia and be like, hey, can I help out with policy? They'd be like, what the fuck? You have no clue what you're talking about. I can't. There's no way that I would be capable of doing that. And honestly, my time is way better spent working with organizations that speak my language, not as in English, my language as in what I do in the US.
I think that's such a good point too, is do what you're good at and do what you know. There was in the emotional intelligence workshop, there was a bit of a discussion about, was it that one or one of the workshops last week? There was a discussion about the difference between your intent and your impact. And the impact that you have is not always the same as your intent. And that's something that we see a huge amount in the impact space, is people come in with good intentions and they think because they've got good intentions, they can do no wrong. That is not true. So much harm is done in this world by people with good intentions. And I think it's really important to, if you're excited about a cause and you want to get involved with it, do take a step back and ask yourself, do I actually have the skills to contribute here? I think the classic one is the houses. We always come back to the houses, going and building a house in a developing country when you've never touched a brick before. And you don't know how to build a structurally safe house. And you're also doing someone local out of a job who could be actually paid to build that house. And they might actually have much more skills in the area than you. But actually understanding where your skills are and where your knowledge is and what the limits of your knowledge are. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't apply that knowledge and you can't do something that maybe you're not perfect at yet. Of course, we're all at different levels and there's always ways of applying your skills. But it's really important in the impact space, there's this idea that there's so much need, any help is good help. But that's not true. An unskilled person coming in and going, yeah, I can run this program. I've never run a program before. I have no idea what I'm doing. But you need someone, right? And I'm here. That's probably going to cause more harm than good. And it's really important to be cognizant of that, I think.
Two quick things. I think board service is a really cool way to get involved with nonprofits. I think that all of you would be great board members. And a lot of nonprofits will do that with you remotely. So back to the remote question. I'm a little location dependent right now in New York just because I also do gala events, which I can't not be there for those. But I've actually, I'm building my business so that I can be more remote. But because I work with these small nonprofits, they get it. I've been amazed at how much they get it. I started my business and 6 months later, I was on the road for 3 months and they were all like, sweet, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll just Skype. Like, they don't have offices because in New York City, like, why spend that money on space? So they also weren't going to see me all the time. So I think the flexibility of being a nomad with this work is really great. And I think with board service, a lot of organizations in the U.S. at least will do board meetings by phone. Usually, most of them want to do them at least quarterly. And if you have expertise in online marketing, I know 20 theater organizations that would gladly have you as a board member. If you have any sort of financial management skill set, these are all things you don't have to be there to do. You can advise, you can look over their monthly reporting, you can look over their annual audit for them to make sure it makes sense. You can help them build a website like we're going to do. I was like so delighted that we're working with an arts organization, guys. I'm so excited. But you know, like there's so much you can do, and if you don't feel like you want to get into that contracting space, board service is a really cool way to get involved and do it remotely.
Being a board member can sound a bit intimidating, but it really is just being someone who thinks, being someone who's able to look at the information that's presented, try to understand it, ask intelligent questions, and make sure that it all makes sense. Ask things. Have we thought about this? Maybe we should be doing this. What if we come at it from this angle? If you're someone who can do that, you can be a board member. Yeah. Board members are the only ones in non-profits who don't get paid, by the way. It's written into the Constitution. That's the non-profit
But
part.
then you get to be like, well, I'm the chair of the board.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think, Amber? Yeah.
I just want to mention quickly also, we all work with nonprofits. That's not all that I do. And I think it's important to mention that you do not need to work with a nonprofit to be in social impact. There's a lot more that you can do. Even like, for example, like my tech clients that I work with, like they know the work that I do. So they will come to me when they have questions about these things and how they can make a difference in their company, whether it's their company culture or outside with the communities that they're working with. So that's like, first off, just being aware of this with the decisions that you make with your contracts or clients or business. Like that alone makes a huge difference. I also really like to enforce people to educate themselves and be reading the news, and I know that stresses some people out, so if that's like something that brings up anxiety, then you don't need to, but I really do think that it's important, especially with everything going on in the world right now, that we're kind of, to a certain extent, staying in touch with it and knowing what's going on in our communities, wherever they may be. I had another point, and then I just lost it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
You're good. So that idea of, for me, was like finding the things that I really, really care about, right? Like for me, it's like girls and, and I love traveling and like how can I combine all those things? And, like maybe you can find an organization that is like doing something that you're really passionate about, maybe seeing how they need help. Because, like maybe spending a few hours, a month giving back that way.
Yeah, and also, like, I just remembered it. It's as simple as, like, people like us, and I know there's a lot of other people in this room that also do similar work, and even as simple as being like, hey, is there something that I can share of yours or an organization that you work with? Like, that alone, getting something like this in front of more people is helpful to us. Yeah. Like, that's always helpful, and if all you want to be is an advocate for something, that is absolutely fine, and it's helpful in its own right.
Yeah. Well, and to get back to the volunteering thing, like I know we joke about the building houses, but I know like Clint works with the Red Cross, and I know that they rely on volunteers. So like there are nonprofits that you clearly, if you're like I have some time to give, they absolutely want that.
And there are 100% opportunities for unskilled volunteers, just like there are opportunities for unskilled workers, people who are willing to learn. And there are also, so one of my clients runs a volunteer home visiting program. So it's for new parents, particularly those from highly vulnerable communities, and they send someone around once a week to just hang out and have a coffee and check in and how are you doing. You don't need particular skills for that. You need empathy, you need kindness, you need the ability to have a conversation. You don't need marketing skills. You don't need, so like there are 100% opportunities to do things as outside of your skill set as well. But it's about identifying what skills are needed and making sure that you do have those things.
Like, so we're all super busy, I mean, we're busy doing many things. Sometimes it's just traveling. What is maybe one thing that we can do maybe right now after this conference that can, lead to that, to, doing some, including impact world in the work, like work in the work that you're doing?
I would say if this is something that has jumped out at you, if you're like, I do actually want to do work that that helps people in some way, it doesn't have to be the group who's in the most need. It doesn't have to be the group who you're most passionate about. It kind of just has to be an opportunity that's there and something that you do care about. I would recommend having a look at your existing client base if you're someone with clients, or if you're a remote employee, having a look at your employer, and just having a look at the values and looking at the mission of the organisation, and starting to think about how those resonate with your own personal values, and how that might be something that you can either move your work more into that values space, or maybe begin to look for clients who are more resonant with your own personal values. You know, if you're someone who is passionate about, say, LGBTQI rights, maybe looking for an organisation, doesn't have to be a non-profit, could be a for-profit company, but who has that as part of their mission, working with LGBTQI people. That might be a really positive way that you could begin to look at some of these issues.
I was going to say the same exact thing. You know, yesterday, I forget who it was talking about values up here, and I'm actually struggling because one of my bigger clients that I do a gala for, I've recently become aware that the values they speak of are not values they're actually living in the company, and I'm discussing with my staff how do we break up with them. And so I think that even if you're not working in the nonprofit space, being really clear about the values you want to get behind, and you might have that client who's going to pay you a lot to do something, but you know, like, you can do better in the world by just saying, actually, that's not for me.
What do you think? Do you have something to add to that?
I mean, so when I first started working with nonprofits and I knew I wanted to get in this space, I did take on a couple of clients that I worked with for like pro bono, like as what I do. Like, I did strategy, I did consulting. And I schedule it into my workday the same way that I did my clients. And I think one of the issues that we do a lot when we're volunteering and offering our work for free is we schedule it separately from that. And by scheduling it right next to my clients, I started realizing that I loved the work I was doing with them so much that I actually started prioritizing them over my paying clients, which obviously could be a huge issue, but it also told me that this was what I wanted to do. And it was really, really clear to me because I had been able to prioritize it instead of saying, cool, I have a holiday, I can do something on this day, or cool, I have a couple hours, I can do it. It was part of every single day of my work. And being able to just see the way that it impacted me mentally and how excited I got and how much I wanted to be able to connect them to more opportunities and help them further and become even more involved than just what I was doing really showed me that this was something that I was passionate about. And I feel like that might be a good starting point for anybody that does not work in this space yet. Just having the opportunity to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to focus on this the same way that I would for a client and see if it's something I want to do. And if it's not, fine, move on. But it's a good test to see if you actually care about it. Because honestly, if I cannot like prioritize that project as much as my clients, I should not be putting my time towards that anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we're going to open up for questions now. So the microphone is. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the good intentions thing, because I think that's where I get overwhelmed sometimes, because a lot of places do have good intentions, especially like things that are in other countries. Sometimes people go with their idea of what will be helpful from their culture, and they're not actually being helpful for that culture, or they're just making people dependent and not helping like the local group that they're helping stand on their own feet. So are there like certain red flags, or what would you recommend to make sure that the company or potential client or whatever you're looking at is actually helping?
It's a really tricky one, yeah. It's about asking, and more than asking, it's about listening. It's absolutely a problem in the international development space in particular, but also just being a member of that culture isn't necessarily a green light either. I heard a fantastic story at a fuck-up night in Bali earlier this year from this Indonesian girl. She was from Java, and she created a community tourism project in a small village in Java that to help that community to build incomes and build support, and fantastic intentions. And her story on the fuck-up night was that she forgot to listen to what the community actually wanted, and the whole thing fell apart very spectacularly. She was a member of that community. She wasn't a Western person coming in and imposing her own ideas. She was a person from a different city coming in and imposing her ideas. So the cultural thing isn't necessarily okay. as well. We need to remember that one person from a culture doesn't speak for all people from that culture.
I would also say, like, sometimes you just don't know until you're there.
Yeah.
So I would say two things. When you find out, make a graceful exit and make it clear to them. I've had to do this with some clients where I make it clear to them why we're not going to work together. I also think it's important, and this might just be a nonprofit arts thing, but too many people then don't speak up in nonprofit arts because they're like, well, everyone's trying their best. It's like, well, if we continue with that mentality, then we're going to allow people who aren't doing it well to continue. So I think it's also then important to share that with other people looking for these opportunities. Don't sort of go, oh, well, I made a mistake. I don't want to hurt anyone else. Like, I think it does need to be shared also.
Yeah, I think it's about asking the question, listening to the answers, listening when you haven't asked a question as well, but also staying flexible. So and making sure your approach is adaptable and flexible. So if you come in with this great idea, start working in this great idea, and it becomes apparent that there are issues, don't stick with it. Have that flexibility to adapt, listen, and change in response to what's going on.
Absolutely. Another question? It's Kelly over there.
Hey, hi. So I just wanted to, it's more of a comment, I guess, but one of the ways that you can give, I've worked in nonprofits for about 15 years, and this isn't the most sexy idea, but you know, we all want to give back in some way because we're like good humans, but most of the time, nonprofits, what they really, really need is money.
Yeah.
They need money.
Yeah.
More than they need our skills sometimes. So I think if you really want to make an impact, find a nonprofit that you really like and you trust, and give them some money.
Yeah.
Like, give them some money. And if you work with big, like, I'm serious, I'm really serious. That's what they need. And every time that someone contacted me and was like, I want to volunteer, I was like, can you just give me $1,000? I need a new computer. That's what I need, right?
Yeah.
So if you're working with for-profit clients and you're doing well with them, take one project a year and give half of it to a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take you any time. It's no effort at all. You just write a check.
I would also say also give monthly. You know, if you're like, I can give $100 to someone right now, or like I could give 10 a month. Cash flow is a real issue with a lot of nonprofits, and so like it's a thing that they'll try to talk to donors about, and it's confusing. But like if you can set up a monthly donation with a nonprofit of your choice, that really helps them too to plan for the future and with cash flow.
Yeah.
Also, like if you work with a for-profit company, see how you can use them to work with causes that you care about, right? Like, yeah, often they'll match your donation. They all do donations too, right? So there's different ways that you can work with them so they can do it. Like Google, for example, like gives out so much money every year, and having someone there makes it way easier to get that money. But obviously, not all of us can afford to give what we would like to. So there's other ways to like use money from companies that you work with to give for things that you care about.
Yeah, and in the like volunteering, like if you're gonna do that, also there's an organization that volunteer in the Dominican Republic, a few actually, and they sometimes like volunteers like us want to go there, and because we want to go so much, we have we also have to pay, but we want to go and work there. They have to make up the work. Sometimes they don't have work for you because they don't even sometimes know exactly what you're good at. And so you're going there, you're giving your money, but you're also kind of on the way of things because they're actually having to work so you can work.
Yeah.
So maybe like finding other ways, like giving money is a great way too.
So I kind of want to piggyback off of that and all the conversation that's happening right now. So two things that I do in my company is for all that are kind of, it's about exponential impact. And it's all of the clients that I work with, if they need something for their businesses or their services, they know that on my end, I'm going to be doing the research for who I'm recommending. Do they produce things in an environmentally sustainable way, or do they have fair labour practices and all that? I might not always recommend the cheapest vendors, but it will be a vendor that lines up with the ethics that I set for my business, and they're hiring me. So that's one thing. We all, many of us work with clients. It's who you vote with, who you recommend in terms of services and providers. And then also, in terms of the giving money and whatnot, I make that a kind of a company culture knit the team together thing. So we're a member of 1% for the Planet, and every year all of my team, I say this is the bucket that we're going to donate, and all of my team members choose a non-profit that means something to them, and we split the bucket between the non-profit so that my team members feel like they've got the voice in some of the impact. So it's something that's kind of mutually beneficial in terms of trying to spread out the impact that we can help other people have, but also knitting us together as a group.
I also, this just reminds me, you know, the Facebook donations campaigns now, I'm actually having a lot, because I work with such small groups, a lot of them are having a lot of success. They're board members who are jumping on and doing a $250 campaign. Well, for them, that's great, and their board members running that. Fundraising takes time and effort. That's why I get clients, you know, and so if you're able to dedicate your birthday or at the holidays, you know, run a campaign and say, listen, you know, don't send me a gift for Christmas, you know, please donate to this charity. And as much as the big ones are doing great work, and yes, if that's where your affinity lies, I think finding a small one, because those small groups, $250 does something for them, $500 does something for them. And so, yeah, you know, we don't like, but we're all minimalists, we don't like stuff, right? So if somebody wants to give you a gift, have them send that money to a nonprofit instead.
On the other side of that, there's other funding sources available to impact organisations as well. So the profit for purpose ones don't accept donations. They create a product, and then a portion of their product, not even necessarily a portion of the profits, but the product can actually be designed to have a social impact. So I keep coming back to this one that I work with the disability food supplies. Yeah, they do things like food delivery that's packaged, that's appropriate for a person who's blind, who can then easily understand what's in the package, easily access the package without being able to see it, different things like that. And they're a profit for purpose company. They don't accept donations. That's not part of their mission. But if that's more the sort of thing that you want to work with, then that's also open to you. Likewise, government is a huge source of funding for so many social impact projects around the world. There are lots of organisations who rely on government funds, not on individual donors. So it's not the only way to make an impact. It is absolutely a fantastic way to make an impact with certain types of organisations. But if that's not what you want to do, if you are more interested in working with a different type of organisation or using your skill set in a different way, as I said, like my thing is kind of, I'm a bureaucracy whisperer. I'm really good at helping people get through bureaucracy. So I'm much better working with these organisations who have a lot of government funds. So there's different ways of doing it. It doesn't always just come down to donations.
Yeah. Any more questions?
For the profit for purpose, is there any regulation behind that guaranteeing that these companies that are saying that they're going to donate are doing that? And a second question is, you know, for example, my company, we were looking at donating to one of the causes, and it was a large sum up front to even say that we could donate to that cause. So, yeah.
So the answer to the first question is no. That's one of the issues in this emerging space, these profit-for-purpose companies. Because they do function as under legislation as a private company. Now, of course, this is going to be different in every country. And there may be some countries that are at the front of this and are developing different company structures for profit-for-purpose companies. I'm not aware of any. I think that could be a thing. Certainly in Australia, which is the jurisdiction that I'm most familiar with, no, there's no regulation. So what you need to be doing in that context is doing a bit of due diligence on the company, doing a bit of research. They might be publishing things like annual reports or stuff like that. They might be making their financial statements public, that sort of thing. You can talk to founders, talk to executives, whoever's working in that company that you're able to get meetings with, and try to ask them the questions. What impact are you having? Where's the evidence that you're having this impact? What are you doing that's actually doing this? Because, yeah, at present, that regulation aspect of things is lacking. It's not there.
I would love to know more about your second question. Like, do you mean like that they would be recognized in some way for the gift, or like the nonprofit wouldn't take the money at all?
No, I'm saying that the profit for purpose sounds like a great option because some of the larger organizations, we said, hey, we'd like to, on checkout, say, hey, we donate a portion to your purpose. In order to do that, to use their name, we had to come up with a large upfront sum to even do this.
So that's actually a little bit different to what I mean by profit for purpose. That would actually be a donation, and it would be a donation made by one company to a non-profit company. What I mean by profit for purpose is businesses that are structured as a for-profit entity, but do their work in such a way that it causes an impact. So, for example, we heard earlier about the Year One project, volunteer project. That was with a cafe that functions as a for-profit cafe, but all the employees are people with autism. And as part of their mission, what they're doing is training up people with autism, giving them life skills, giving them employment skills to help them then lead meaningful lives. So that's the purpose part. The profit part is they're a cafe. They sell coffee, they sell meals, they make money doing it. So they're not a non-profit, but they're a mission-driven for-profit company.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I would like to add something about what we haven't talked so far about. I think the daily and the small one-on-one impact that we can have. Like I went to the farmer's market next to our Airbnb and everything is wrapped in plastic. Like there's a farmer's market, but then they pre-pack the stuff for you in plastic bags. And because my Spanish is almost good enough for that, I had a really long conversation where he spoke and I kind of listened, with the guy selling it, trying to explain to me what he thinks about the plastic and the environment and the world. And like those kind of small things, like what do we do? Why do we use the plastic cup? Like how can we impact, especially as people who travel a lot, who use airplanes a lot, who do affect, we have a negative impact in many ways. So how can we balance that with those small, it's great to work. Like I love my workouts, so have an impact, but those kind of small things.
Right, yeah. So there's many things that we can do, like especially for like the environment, right? Like whatever we go to an Airbnb, just like we're like, well, this is not my house. I'm not paying electricity. All the lights are on. Like maybe changing that, or traveling with your water bottle.
I feel like, there's like an endless list of things that we could do, right? But I think it's just the fact that we need to be more aware of that. But also, and I don't mean to say this to say that we aren't all incredible, but I do think that there's something to be said for focusing on what we are really passionate about. I do my best to be good about the environment and to not waste plastic and to save electricity, but it's not my focus. I do way too much travel to feel like that could be my focus. That's just a decision that I have made. It's not to say that I don't care. It's clearly really important. I just know that I am able to put things that are a resource to me towards something that I care deeply about, and it's something that I will spend 20 hours a day working for. And unfortunately, none of us are superheroes. We can't do every single little thing possible.
I think compassion fatigue is a real issue.
Yeah.
There's so much need in this world. There's so many different issues we can care about. And it can feel like we should care about all of them, and it's not possible. We don't have that bandwidth to care about everything. And then I think that can make, for me, I find myself getting quite depressed and quite down on it, like but it isn't possible to do everything. So I 100% agree with what you're saying in terms of trying to have a lower impact in terms of environment and things like that. I'm always the one going, oh, no plástico, por favor. Menos plástico en el mundo, and they laugh at me and they don't give me a plastic bag, which is good.
I think that we're actually a pretty conscious group here. But
I think you don't necessarily have to. It's kind of that imperfect feminism thing, You can care about stuff without caring about everything.
I think you just always want to be improving, like you
Yeah,
were saying
that
earlier
too.
about your business values and stuff. I think that's important.
Yeah.
I work paper-free with my clients. I have a couple that are older and keep wanting me to do paper stuff with them, and I'm like, nope, we're getting you on Google Docs. We're going to do it this way. There's just certain little things like that, and also listening to them. My one client, the disabled client, she's amazing, and she's also very active in the queer space, and she has taught me so much about writing and listening and working with people in so many different spaces. She's one of my favorites, and so I also think that like a little bit of the self-care is like her and another client of mine. It's like whenever things get really overwhelming, I try to schedule a call with them because they're just so inspirational and great, and I always learn something from them. I think that's one of the coolest parts about working in this space. That like, yeah, when it gets to be too much, I try to tap into someone who's doing something amazing, and that I can take something from and be like, okay, that's action.
Yeah.
Great. It's
But I
great.
think it is also a really good point that as individuals we can have social impact as well. And just by saying, oh, no plástico, por favor,
Yeah.
leading
Absolutely.
by example, and
Yeah.
you know, like it's something. There's a lot of people in this world who don't realize the impact that plastic has. And leading by example, I think, and leading by example when it comes to things like inclusivity as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like working with people with disability, or using diverse skin tones in our images on social media and in marketing and things like that. I think leading by example is in all of the different things that we do, and living a life that's in line with our own values, figuring out what those values are, and then working towards them, I think is something we can all do as individuals, even if we're not doing social impact work in the more defined sense.
Yeah, I think that there's so many things that we can do. And so I think that was our last question. Oh, we have one more. Well, do we have time for, like we're gonna be out. Like if you have any questions for us, like also we're gonna be
Yeah, we're all
around.
available.
Come talk to us. We love talking about this
Yes,
stuff.
yeah,
I
we do.
just wanted to say, because maybe it's interesting for the others also, there are institutes who do research on effectiveness on social enterprises and on NGOs. It's different from country to country. In Austria, we have 2, I think, and there are international ones. And one for NGOs is Give Well, I think.
Would you like share those maybe on the Facebook page?
I can,
yeah,
I
so
can,
we can all
but
take a
that's
look at
very
that.
helpful, because
Yeah.
when somebody wants to give a donation, you can look up those
Yeah.
numbers for certain ones at least.
You can also, in the US, there's guidestar.org. It has every 990 tax document from every registered nonprofit in the US, so you can see exactly how they're spending their money. Guidestar.org is a great resource too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies, and thank you, everybody, for your questions. Thank you.